Hello folks, welcome to OTD, also known as On the Deck. My name is Adam Orduna, this is my mom Gina, and today we are going to be breaking into some of the conversations that pertain to the NCAA tournament, college basketball that is.
March Madness,
which has been going on. We've got a lot of conferences that are finishing up their tournaments right now and trying to punch their tickets into the big dance this season as well, and so there's going to be a lot of controversy, as it always is, between some of the smaller mid-major schools versus kind of the bigger schools that may not really get into the tournament because of just how tough their conference may be. And so we're going to just jump into this. We're going to just find out what we think about this and maybe if there's any way we can fix it. And we're just going to see, so is it fair for these smaller schools or these mid-major schools to make it to the dance over some of these other bigger schools that are actually capable of still getting into the tournament?
Well, if you're asking me if it's fair, I'm going to tell you flat out, no, it isn't. I was watching ESPN the other day, and I'm looking at the bracketology, and clearly the brackets haven't 100% come out yet, but there's some teams that have won their tournament for their conference, right, so they automatically get an automatic bid.
The auto bids,
and one
yes.
of the teams I saw had a losing record. They were 15-19, but then they got to their conference tournament, they got through, they won, they beat the conference favorite, and now they punch a ticket to the dance. And you're going to have teams coming out of major conferences, let's just say, I don't know, the Big 12, who are going to be sitting at home. And you can't tell me a 15-19 team out of, JoJo's conference is better than the 3 teams in the Big 12 that are left out, because there's 7 of 10 teams from the Big 12 that are projected to go into the big dance. And I just don't think that that's fair. No, I absolutely do not think that's okay.
Well, and if you look at the conferences and you just break them down, you got a team like a Kansas State, for instance, we're staying in the Big 12 here, who night in and night out, they have to fight Okie State, they've got to fight Baylor, they've got to fight Texas Tech, they've got to fight KU, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
West
all
Virginia,
the way down
Oklahoma.
The entire Big 12. They've got to fight each other, or not fight, but it's almost a fight every night.
It's a battle every night.
The games are very intense. There's a lot of good athletes on the court, and so each and every game is highly important. And so you can say the same thing for the ACC. There's a lot of really good teams, Virginia, North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also in the Big Ten, Michigan State, and all these other teams that are really good. And so you look at some of these mid-major teams and these conferences that you're like, oh, yeah, well, they won the tournament, but how does that fare out against them playing really in the big dance?
Well, let's take a look at some of these schools. Let's say Alabama. People are saying Alabama's on the bubble. There's also talk that Michigan might be on the bubble. Are you telling me that a team from some small conference who's 15-19, but they won their tournament, can go into the big dance and that Michigan wouldn't beat them, or the Alabama wouldn't take them down? And Alabama's not what you consider a powerhouse basketball school. Obviously, it's football school, but coming out of the SEC and playing that high level of competition.
Correct.
And I get it, with basketball especially, any given day someone can beat someone else.
Yes.
I get that. So that's the argument, and that's the fun of the tournament.
Right.
You get the Cinderella school that comes in and wins. What's your team that you loved so much last year?
I don't know why she does this. She always puts these on me. That's not me. I don't know why she does this, but it's not my team. It's not my guy. I don't even know the team. But Georgia State last year made it into the dance.
Wasn't that him
and the
flopping
head
out of the chair?
coach had a injury to his foot or his knee or something, and so he was on this scooter thing, if you will. And he had
on a rolling chair.
Now, it was a miraculous play. That we're just bringing this back to last year's tournament. I don't even remember who they beat, but it was a team that they shouldn't have beat, and they won. And the coach's son hit the game-winning 3 or whatever. Yeah. But the point is this guy, the coach, just fell out onto the floor.
Fell out.
His arms fully extended. It was just ridiculous. And it's to the point of what we're talking about is a lot of these teams may be able to, I don't want to call it luck, but they may be able to pull out a win once in a while over these teams. But when you look at it game after game, most likely the other teams are probably going to win.
Well, don't you feel like
it makes it hard?
Yeah, don't you feel like part of the reason he fell out on the floor was because you haven't been there? There's that phrase to act like you've been there before. He fell out because your son hit the game-winning shot. I get that excitement, but clearly you haven't been there. You don't see Mike Krzyzewski falling out on the floor.
No, you don't see Roy Williams.
You don't see Bill Self.
You don't see any of these major coaches do that.
No.
And so therefore,
because you win and you lose all the time playing great competition.
And that's how it is night in and night out. And so for me, I just really feel like a lot of these mid-major teams get their small claim to fame, and that's great for everyone else. But when it really comes down to it, I really find it difficult to leave out certain teams like a Michigan or, like you said, an Alabama, or even teams like here in the Big 12 at K-State and Okie State, who traditionally are really good, have just had to go through the gauntlet this year because of how strong the conference is. And so when you look at some of these teams, 15 and 19 record, who is in that conference? How did you even get there? And you shouldn't even be allowed. It's just like in college football. If you don't win 6 games, you shouldn't be allowed to go to postseason play. And they should even move that up to 7 games.
I can't believe it.
And that's just how it is.
You shouldn't be at a bowl game with a 5-game record.
This was the first year that ever happened in college football, where you had teams that had losing records going to postseason play. And so I think the same thing kind of it applies here for college basketball.
Yeah, and you were talking about maybe we could fix it. My thing is, I understand that what they're saying is to get into the big national tournament, you have to win your individual tournament, and then you get into your individual tournament, and you are one of the teams with a losing record, and you happen to win right then for that weekend. And that brings up the question, because there's some of those, isn't Monmouth in one of those situations where they've been winning and dominating their conference, but they didn't win their conference tournament, and the argument's being made that they should still get to come to the big dance.
Correct.
Well, my question is, how are you going to give that to a Monmouth, but you're going to tell Kansas State they have to stay home, or you're going to tell Oklahoma State you have to stay home?
Right. Or some of these schools, there's just a lot of schools out there that
Michigan.
Or UCLA, or any of these schools that have not only had the tradition, they still have a really good fan base, and they're just as qualified as these other teams. And so when you look at these mid-major schools, it makes it really hard to sit there and be like, on paper, when you're looking at it, this team deserves to get in. But
well, then what happens is
I just don't know.
I don't either.
I just don't know.
I love the Cinderella story. We all do. But when you have one Cinderella team, that's one thing. When all of a sudden you're leaving out teams that have played night in, night out, high-level competition, entertaining competition, and then all of a sudden they're sitting at home, or not just sitting at home, they're maybe in the NIT. I feel like that's unbalanced. And my answer to that would be maybe some of these mid-majors play in the NIT, and that the big March Madness, the big dance, because it's all March Madness, all these tournaments, but the big dance is reserved specifically for your power conferences.
Right. And I do understand it. If you're a coach and one of your schools is a Division I school, and it may be small, but you do win 20 plus games in a season, you feel like you deserve a chance to go to the big dance. I totally understand that. But you have to still look at the body of work. Who have you played? Who is within your conference? Why do you have 20 wins? Are you that good? Is your team that good?
Exactly.
Or is your conference just that bad? Because that's where I just continue to have a hard time with it. Is like, I love the underdog story. I love the Cinderella excitement when it comes to the postseason. But when it really comes down to, oh, this team's really going to beat the other team, and you have your one game and you do that, that's where everyone's like, see. But it's like, no, night in and night out. They don't have to fight or face KU or Texas or
your
Baylor,
players aren't coming in with their knees tired, beat up.
That's part of the problem with the Big 12, is that every single game, every night, it's a battle. And so the reason why there hasn't been that much further games going on from the Big 12 in the dances is because they're so tired once they get into the dances.
You could say the same thing for the Big 10. You could say the same thing for the ACC.
Yes, exactly.
Even the SEC, which again, is not necessarily a powerhouse up and down the board, but there's several of them.
I'll give it to them and the Pac-12. Arizona, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. There's a lot of really good schools. Arizona State that have Utah. There's a lot of really good schools within those conferences that have basketball programs, that have fan bases, that are capable of making noise further into the tournament, and I just really feel like it's hard.
Well, maybe the question should be this then. Maybe it's not just if you win your conference, but there has to be a minimum bar of the record for these, and I'm saying this specifically for these smaller conferences, not necessarily major conferences, because you're going to go in your major conference and get beat up. But I'm saying that if you're coming from one of these mid-major conferences or smaller conferences, that you have to have at least X number of wins, whether you win your tournament or not. Because if you have a losing record and trip across your tournament win, I don't think you should be coming into the dance to the exclusion of Michigan. I don't think that's okay.
Or if you're one of the smaller schools or mid-major schools, you've got to play at least 5 or 6 top 50 schools.
There you
Even
go.
if you lose some of those
There you
games,
go.
to say, hey, we've challenged ourselves. We've played at least 3 top 50 schools on our schedule, or 4 top 50 schools, just to kind of let everyone else know, hey, we're here to play. We're a good team.
We legit have
we have
something to
won
offer.
20 games because we are that good, and everything is validated because we've gone out and played other teams. I
agree.
just look at these other small schools that you only play within your conference, and yeah, you've won all these games, but you really traditionally haven't played that same type of teams that everyone else is playing, and so
I
it makes
agree.
it hard.
Well, we'll get the brackets soon, so
Yeah,
we'll see
find
what
out.
happens.
It will come out sooner than later. Well, that's it from us on OTD. I just want to say thanks for watching, folks. Have a nice day.